I still remember the exact sound my mother-in-law's suitcase made when it hit the curb next to the dumpster behind our building. That hollow plastic thud, like something final breaking. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, and Karen Mitchell was sitting on the cold concrete in her $200 wool coat, mascara running down both cheeks, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her fist. My husband Brandon stood over her with his mouth open, looking back and forth between his mother and me like he was watching a car accident happen in slow motion. "Ashley," he said, his voice shaking, "what the hell happened?" I leaned against the doorframe of our apartment building, arms crossed, completely calm. And when I gave him my answer, 4 words, just 4 simple words. The color drained from his face so fast, I thought he might pass out right there in the parking lot. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 5 months to when my life was something I actually recognized. 5 months earlier, I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I mean that. Genuinely, deeply, almost suspiciously happy. The kind of happy that makes you knock on wood and whisper, "Don't jinx it," to yourself when you're alone in the car. Brandon and I had been married for 2 years, together for 4. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakdale, a suburb about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. It wasn't fancy. Beige carpet, builder-grade cabinets, a balcony that overlooked the parking lot of a Walgreens. But it was ours. Our names on the lease, our mismatched furniture, our little life. I was 28, working as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown. Steady paycheck, decent benefits, patients who mostly remembered to floss. Brandon was 31, a project manager at a mid-size construction company. Between the two of us, we pulled in about $94,000 a year before taxes. Not rich, but comfortable. We'd just started putting $400 a month into savings for a down payment on a house. We had a spreadsheet. We had a timeline. We had a plan. And God, I loved that man. Brandon was 6'1" with these warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. He'd bring me coffee in bed every single morning, black with 2 sugars, exactly how I liked it. On Sundays, we'd go to the farmer's market, and he'd carry all the bags without me asking. He'd text me stupid memes at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, just to make me smile. He called me Ash in this soft way that made my stomach flip, even after 4 years. Our apartment smelled like the vanilla candle I kept on the kitchen counter. We had a routine: dinner together at 7, some show on Netflix, then we'd talk in bed for 20 minutes before falling asleep. It sounds boring when I describe it. It wasn't boring. It was the most peaceful thing I'd ever known. I grew up in chaos. My parents divorced when I was 9, and my mom moved us, me and my younger sister Megan, 4 times in 6 years. Different apartments, different school districts, different men showing up at breakfast. By the time I was 18, all I wanted was stability. Quiet. A door I could lock and know no one was going to throw it open screaming at 2 a.m. Brandon gave me that, and I was so, so grateful. His mother, Karen, was a different story. I want to be fair here, I really do. Karen Mitchell was 63 years old, recently retired from a career as an office manager at an insurance company in Raleigh. She'd been widowed for 11 years. Brandon's dad, Greg, died of a heart attack at 54. She lived alone in a 3-bedroom house that was way too big for her. And I know that loneliness does things to people. I know that. But Karen had a way of making you feel like you were never quite enough. The first time I met her was at a dinner Brandon arranged at an Italian restaurant near her house. I wore a blue dress, did my hair, brought her flowers. She looked at the bouquet and said, "Oh, carnations. Those are what they put on tables at funeral homes, aren't they?" Then she smiled at me with all her teeth and said, "But they're lovely, dear." At our wedding, she wore cream. Not white, cream. Close enough that my sister Megan leaned over during the ceremony and whispered, "Is she serious right now?" During the toast, Karen talked for 6 minutes about what a wonderful son Brandon was, mentioned me once, and mispronounced my last name. But these were small things. Annoying, sure, but small. Brandon would say, "That's just Mom." And I'd let it go because I loved him and I didn't want to be that wife, the one who makes her husband choose. I'd seen what that kind of pressure did to marriages. My Aunt Carol's husband left her partly because she couldn't stop fighting with his family. So I smiled. I nodded. I swallowed it. For 2 years, the arrangement worked. Karen lived 90 minutes away. We saw her once a month for Sunday lunch, called her every Wednesday evening, and spent Thanksgiving at her place. Manageable. I could be the perfect daughter-in-law for 6 hours at a stretch. I could bite my tongue when she rearranged my kitchen during visits or told me my pot roast was interesting. I could do that. What I couldn't do, what no one could do, was live with her. The first sign of trouble came on a Saturday morning in late May. Brandon's phone rang at 7:15 a.m. I was still half asleep, face buried in the pillow, but I heard his side of the conversation. "Wait, slow down, Mom. What do you mean?" "How much?" "No, that can't be right. Did you call the bank?" Okay, don't panic. Let me talk to Ashley and I'll call you back." He hung up and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I rolled over and touched his back. "What happened?" He ran his hand over his face. "Mom's in trouble, financially." It came out in pieces over the next hour as we sat at the kitchen table with coffee going cold. Karen had refinanced her house 3 years ago to pay off some credit card debt, $42,000 worth, which was news to both of us. But she'd gotten an adjustable rate mortgage, and the rate had just jumped. Her monthly payment went from $1,100 to $1,850. On a retirement income of $2,600 a month from Social Security and a small pension, she couldn't make it work. She was already 2 months behind. The bank had sent a notice. "She could sell the house," I said carefully. Brandon shook his head. "She's underwater on it, Ash. She owes more than it's worth after the refi. The market in her neighborhood tanked last year. Her realtor said she'd be lucky to break even, and that's before closing costs." "What about her savings, her 401k?" "She cashed out the 401k 2 years ago. The credit cards? I didn't even know about the credit cards." He looked at me with those brown eyes, and I saw something I'd never seen in them before. Fear. "She's got maybe $3,000 in her checking account. That's it." My stomach tightened. I already knew where this was going. I could feel it the way you feel a storm coming, that shift in pressure, that metallic taste in the air. "Brandon," I said slowly, "what are you thinking?" He reached across the table and took my hand. "Just temporarily, just until she figures things out. Maybe 2 or 3 months. She could take the guest room. She'd help with groceries, with cooking. It wouldn't be—" "You want your mother to move in with us?" He squeezed my hand. "I know it's a lot to ask. I know you two aren't. I know it's complicated. But she's my mom, Ash. She's got nobody else. My sister's in Portland. She's got 3 kids. There's no room. And I can't just let her lose everything and end up—" His voice cracked. "She's my mom." I looked at him, at this man who brought me coffee every morning and carried my grocery bags and made me feel safe for the first time in my life, and I saw a son terrified of failing his mother. And I thought about my own mom, how she struggled, how no one helped her, how different things might have been if someone had just opened a door. 2 months, I said. 3, max. And we set ground rules, clear boundaries. Brandon's face broke into this enormous, relieved smile. He pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, Ash. I promise you won't regret this. She'll be on her best behavior. I'll talk to her. I mean it, Brandon. Boundaries. Absolutely, whatever you need. I'll make sure she understands. He kissed my forehead, and I leaned into him. And for a moment, I let myself believe it would be fine. People do this all the time. Families help each other. It's temporary. It's manageable. I was wrong. I was so catastrophically, spectacularly wrong. Karen arrived on a Sunday afternoon in early June, 3 weeks later. Brandon had driven to Raleigh with a rented U-Haul to pick up her things. Not all of them, since this was supposed to be temporary. But somehow the U-Haul came back full. a queen-size bed frame, a dresser, 14 boxes of kitchen supplies, a recliner, 3 lamps, a sewing machine, 2 rugs, and a framed needlepoint that said, "Home is where Mom is," which she hung in our hallway before she'd even taken off her shoes. I stood in the doorway of the guest room watching Brandon and his buddy Tyler haul boxes up 2 flights of stairs, and I counted the items, and I thought, this does not look like someone who plans to leave in 2 months. But I said nothing. I smiled. I helped Karen unpack her linens. I made dinner for 3 that night, baked chicken, roasted vegetables, a salad. Karen ate half her plate and said, "Oh, you use store-bought seasoning? I always make my own blend." "I'll show you tomorrow." That night in bed, Brandon whispered, "See? This is going to be fine." I stared at the ceiling and listened to his mother's television bleeding through the wall, some true crime show, volume cranked up, and something cold and heavy settled in my chest. I didn't have a name for it yet, but I know it now. It was a warning. The first 3 days were manageable. Awkward, but manageable. Karen kept mostly to her room during the day, came out for meals, made small talk. She complimented the apartment. Cozy, she called it, which I knew was Karen speak for small. She thanked me for having her. She even washed the dishes after dinner on Tuesday night. But on Thursday, day 4, I came home from work at 5:30 p.m. and found my living room rearranged. The couch was against the opposite wall. The coffee table was angled diagonally. My bookshelf had been moved to the corner, and half my books were stacked in a pile on the floor because Karen had replaced them with her own framed photos and ceramic figurines. I stood in the middle of the room, my purse still on my shoulder, keys still in my hand, mouth slightly open. Karen came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, good, you're home. I hope you don't mind. I just felt like the energy in here was so blocked. The feng shui was all wrong. It opens up the space, don't you think?" I looked at my books on the floor. I looked at the ceramic cat figurine now sitting where my favorite photo of Brandon and me used to be. "Karen," I started. My voice was tight. "And I reorganized the spice cabinet," she continued cheerfully. "You had everything just thrown in there. I alphabetized it all. You're welcome." That night, I told Brandon. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "I'll talk to her." I don't know if he did, because Friday, when I got home, my bathroom products had been moved from the main bathroom to a shelf in our bedroom closet. Karen had spread out her own things, creams, serums, a heated curling iron, 3 different perfumes, across every inch of counter space. "The main bathroom has better lighting for my skin routine," she explained when I asked. "At my age, you need good lighting. You understand, don't you, dear?" I understood something all right, but it wasn't what she thought. On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after Karen moved in, I woke up to the sound of her voice in the kitchen. She was on the phone with someone, laughing loudly, the coffee maker running. I padded out in my pajamas to get my morning cup and froze in the doorway. Karen was sitting at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing something in neat, careful handwriting. When she saw me, she smiled, a wide, deliberate smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Ashley. Sit down. I've been thinking, and I've made a little list, just some guidelines, really, so we can all live together peacefully." She tore the page from the legal pad and slid it across the table toward me. I picked it up. At the top, in capital letters, underlined twice, it read, "House Rules for the Daughter-in-Law." There were 12 items, numbered, each one written in Karen's perfect cursive. I read the first 3, and my hands started to shake. Not from fear, from something much, much worse. I looked up at Karen. She was still smiling, her hands folded neatly on the table, waiting for my response, like she'd just handed me a recipe card. "Well," she said, "I think they're very reasonable." I set the paper down. I took a slow breath, and I smiled back at her, the kind of smile that made her smile falter, just for a second. "Karen," I said quietly, "I think we need to have a conversation." "Karen," I said quietly, "I think we need to have a conversation." But Karen held up her hand, palm out, fingers spread, like she was stopping traffic. Now, Ashley, before you get emotional, I want you to read the whole list. I spent a lot of time on this. I even ran it by my friend Diane. You remember Diane from my church group? And she agreed every single item is perfectly reasonable. I looked back down at the paper. My eyes scanned all 12 rules, and each one hit me like a small, precise slap. Rule 1. Ashley will prepare breakfast by 7 a.m. daily, including weekends. Karen prefers eggs over medium, toast lightly browned, and fresh squeezed orange juice, not from concentrate. Rule 2. The thermostat will remain at 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Ashley tends to keep the apartment too cold. Rule 3. Ashley will not wear revealing clothing in common areas. This is a Christian household. Rule 4. Laundry days are Monday and Thursday. Ashley will include Karen's laundry in her loads. Rule 5. Ashley will limit phone calls with her sister Megan to 15 minutes. Excessive chatting is disruptive. Rule 6. The television in the living room belongs to Karen between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. Ashley and Brandon may use the bedroom TV. Rule 7. Ashley will not rearrange or alter any of Karen's decorations in common spaces. Rule 8. Guests must be approved by Karen 48 hours in advance. No exceptions. Rule 9. Ashley will attend church with Karen every Sunday. Spiritual growth is non-negotiable. Rule 10. Ashley will not discuss Karen's financial situation with anyone, including her own family. Rule 11. All grocery shopping will be done from Karen's approved list. Ashley's experimental cooking causes digestive issues. Rule 12. Brandon is Karen's son first and Ashley's husband second. Ashley will not interfere with their relationship or attempt to turn him against his mother. I read it twice. The second time I noticed Karen had drawn a little smiley face at the bottom. A smiley face, like this was a chore chart on a kindergarten classroom wall. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. Something had shifted inside me, clicked over like a switch being thrown. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something past angry. I was clear. Karen, I said, setting the paper down, this is my apartment. Well, technically, no, not technically, literally. My name is on the lease, mine and Brandon's, not yours. You are a guest here, a guest I welcomed into my home because your son, my husband, asked me to, because you are in financial trouble that you created by running up $42,000 in credit card debt and cashing out your 401k without telling anyone. Karen's smile vanished. Her jaw tightened. I don't think my finances are any of your... Rule 10, right? Don't discuss Karen's financial situation? I tapped the paper. That's convenient. You don't want anyone to know how you got here, but you want to hand me a list of rules like you own the place? No, Karen, that's not how this works. Her eyes went hard and flat. The warm grandma act dropped so fast, it was almost impressive, like watching someone peel off a mask. I am Brandon's mother. I have been in his life for 31 years. You've been here for 4. You don't get to speak to me this way. I get to speak to you any way I want in my own home. We stared at each other across the kitchen table. The coffee maker beeped. Neither of us moved. Then Karen did something I didn't expect. She started crying. Not sobbing, just this quiet, practiced weeping, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, her lower lip trembling. I just wanted us to have structure, she whispered. I'm an old woman, Ashley. I lost my home. I lost my husband 11 years ago. All I have is my son, and you're trying to take him from me. And I felt it, the guilt. It surged up my throat like acid. Because she was a 63-year-old widow sitting in my kitchen crying, and I was the one making her cry. That's how it looked. That's how she wanted it to look. Nobody's taking anyone from you, I said, softer now. But these rules, this isn't happening, Karen. I'll throw this away and we'll start over. You're welcome here, but as a guest, not as the person in charge." She sniffled, nodded slowly, and whispered, "Okay, I'm sorry. You're right." I actually believed her. That was my mistake. Brandon came home that evening and I showed him the list. He read it in the kitchen while Karen was in her room watching TV. His face went through about 6 expressions: confusion, disbelief, embarrassment, anger, then something softer. "I'll handle it," he said. "She's just scared, Ash. She's trying to control something because everything else in her life is out of control. I'll tell her this isn't okay." I already told her. She cried. She apologized. "See? It's resolved. She heard you." "Brandon, she made a numbered list of rules for me to follow in my own home. Rule 12 literally says, 'You're her son first and my husband second.'" He flinched. "I know. That's bad. But she backed down, right? Let's just move forward. 2 more months. We can do this." He pulled me into a hug and I let him, because I was tired and because his arms still felt like the safest place in the world. And I thought, okay, maybe the list was the worst of it. Maybe she needed to push. I pushed back, and now she knows where the line is. The next 3 weeks were quiet, suspiciously quiet. Karen was polite. She helped with dishes. She stayed in her room most evenings. She even complimented my cooking, once, about my pasta, and it sounded almost genuine. I started to relax. I started to think Brandon was right. Then, on a Wednesday night in mid-July, I came home late from work. I'd picked up an extra shift, and found Brandon and Karen sitting at the kitchen table. They both looked up when I walked in, and there was something in the air, that metallic taste again. "What's going on?" I said, setting my bag down. Brandon wouldn't meet my eyes. Karen had her hands folded, that same posture from the morning she'd handed me the list. "Ashley, sit down," Brandon said. "I'll stand. What is it?" He cleared his throat. "Mom and I have been talking, and we think it makes sense for her to stay a little longer." "How much longer?" Silence. "Brandon, how much longer?" "Indefinitely," Karen said. "Not Brandon, Karen." I looked at my husband. "Is that what you think?" He still wouldn't look at me. "It makes financial sense, Ash. If Mom contributes to rent, even $400 a month, we can put more toward the house fund. We'd hit our down payment goal 6 months faster. I ran the numbers on the spreadsheet." My spreadsheet. Our spreadsheet. The one we'd built together on Sunday mornings over coffee. "You ran the numbers," I repeated, "with her, on our spreadsheet." "It's just math, Ashley," Karen said. "Don't make it emotional." Something cracked inside my chest. I could almost hear it, this small structural fracture, like a beam giving way in a house that everyone thought was solid. "When did you two discuss this?" I asked. Brandon shifted in his chair. "Over the last week or so. Mom brought it up and I—" "A week? You've been planning this for a week and you didn't say a word to me?" "I wanted to have all the facts before—" "Before what? Before you ambushed me at my own kitchen table?" My voice was rising. I could feel heat climbing my neck. "Brandon, we agreed. 2 months, 3 max. We set a boundary." "Circumstances change," Karen said smoothly. I ignored her. I kept my eyes locked on Brandon. "Look at me." He finally did. And what I saw in his face wasn't guilt. It was something worse. It was resignation, like he'd already decided and this conversation was just a formality. "She's my mom, Ash," he said quietly. "Where's she gonna go?" That sentence, those 6 words, they would echo in my head for weeks, because what I heard wasn't, "She's my mom." What I heard was, "She matters more." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked into our bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and called my sister Megan. "I think I'm in trouble," I whispered. Megan listened for 45 minutes without interrupting, which, if you know Megan, is a miracle. When I finished, she said, "Ash, you need to do 2 things. 1, start a paper trail. Document everything. Texts, conversations, changes she makes, money discussions. 2, figure out what you're willing to lose. because this is heading somewhere bad and you need to know your line before someone crosses it. I started documenting, quietly. I kept a note on my phone, dates, times, incidents. I screenshotted conversations. I saved every text. I didn't know yet what I was building, but I knew I needed it. 3 weeks later, in early August, I found out why. I was doing laundry, Karen's laundry actually, because despite everything, I was still trying, when I found a folded piece of paper in the pocket of her cardigan. It was a printout of an email from a realtor named Patricia Holden. I recognized the name. Karen had mentioned her once. The email was dated 2 weeks before Karen moved in, mid-May, before she'd even told Brandon about her financial problems. The subject line read, Re-listing Agreement, 445 Pinewood Lane. My hands went cold. 445 Pinewood Lane was Karen's house. The email said, Hi Karen, confirming we've listed the property at $189,000 as discussed. Based on current interest, I'm confident we can close within 60 to 90 days. The proceeds after your remaining mortgage balance, $141,000, should net you approximately $38,000 to $42,000 after closing costs. Let me know if you have questions. I read it 3 times. Then I did the math. Karen's house wasn't underwater. She'd lied. She was selling it, had already listed it before she moved in with us, and she stood to pocket nearly $40,000 from the sale. She wasn't broke. She wasn't desperate. She had engineered this entire thing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Brandon. Mom says she's making pot roast tonight. Your favorite. I stared at the screen, then at the email, then at the washing machine spinning Karen's clothes in my apartment, in my home, where she had moved in with her suitcases and her ceramic cats and her 12 rules and her tears, all of it built on a lie. I folded the email carefully and put it in my pocket, and for the first time in months, I smiled. I didn't confront Karen that night, or the next day, or the day after that. I know that sounds crazy. You find proof that someone has been lying to you, lying to your husband, lying their way into your home, and your first instinct should be to slam it on the table and say, explain this. But Megan's voice was in my head. Paper trail. Know your line. Figure out what you're willing to lose. So I photographed the email, both sides close up with the date visible. I saved it to a locked folder on my phone, and I put the original back in Karen's cardigan pocket before moving it to the dryer. Then I waited. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, smiling at that woman across the dinner table, passing her the salt, saying, "Good night, Karen," while my blood hummed with the knowledge that every tear she'd cried in my kitchen had been performance. Every "I have nowhere to go" had been a script. She'd listed her house before she ever called Brandon panicking. She had a plan, and we were in it. But waiting cost me more than I expected, because while I was being strategic, Karen was escalating. The second week of August, I noticed Brandon pulling away. Small things at first. He stopped bringing me coffee in the morning. When I mentioned it, he shrugged and said, "Mom's usually up first now. She makes a pot. Just grab some." The Sunday farmers market trip stopped because Karen said the crowds gave her anxiety, and Brandon didn't want to leave her alone. Our Netflix routine vanished. Karen had claimed the living room TV every night, and Brandon started watching with her instead of coming to bed. One night, I walked out to get water and found them on the couch together, Karen's head on his shoulder, some Hallmark movie playing. She looked up at me with this expression, not hostile, not smug, just settled, comfortable, like she belonged there and I was the one interrupting. "Come join us, Ashley," she said sweetly. "I'm good. Good night." I went back to bed and lay there in the dark, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own life. By mid-August, Brandon and I were barely talking. Not fighting, that would have required engagement. We were just coexisting. He'd come to bed at 11, I'd already be turned toward the wall. He'd leave for work before I woke up. Our conversations were logistics. Did you pay the electric bill? Your mom needs more of that creamer she likes. I'll be late Thursday. I tried. God, I tried. One Saturday, I suggested we go to dinner, just the two of us. A date night. We hadn't been alone together in weeks. Brandon hesitated. I told Mom I'd help her set up her new tablet tonight. She's been having trouble with the Wi-Fi settings. Brandon, it's a tablet. She can figure it out tomorrow. It'll take 20 minutes, Ash. Don't make it a thing. I'm not making it a thing. I'm asking my husband to have dinner with me. From the hallway, Karen's voice, Oh, go ahead, Brandon. I'll manage. I always do, said in that martyr tone, the one designed to make you feel guilty for breathing. Brandon looked at me. He looked toward his mother's voice, and I watched him choose. Maybe next weekend, he said. I promise. Next weekend didn't happen, or the one after that. The isolation crept in slowly, like water under a door. My friends noticed first. My coworker Jenna asked why I'd been so quiet at work. My friend Lisa texted asking if I was okay, because I'd canceled our last 3 coffee dates. I kept saying, I'm fine, until the words tasted like cardboard. I wasn't fine. I was disappearing. The worst night, the real bottom, was August 28th. I remember the date because it was my birthday. I turned 29. Brandon had forgotten. Not completely. He texted me, Happy B-Day, babe, at 2:14 p.m., 4 hours after I'd left for work. No plans, no card, no coffee in bed like he used to do on my birthday every year since we'd been together. When I got home, Karen was in the kitchen. She'd made a cake, a full, elaborate 3-layer chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, sitting on the counter with a card propped against it. Happy birthday, Ashley, she said, beaming. I wanted to do something special. And here's the thing. It was a beautiful cake, perfectly frosted. The card was store-bought, said, to a wonderful daughter-in-law, in gold script. Inside, Karen had written, So grateful to share this home with you. Love, Mom K. Brandon came home, saw the cake, and his face flooded with relief. See, Mom took care of it. Looks amazing, Mom. He kissed Karen on the cheek. Then he turned to me and said, Happy birthday, Ash, and squeezed my shoulder. Squeezed my shoulder, like I was a coworker. We ate the cake. It was good. Karen made sure to mention 3 times that she'd made it from scratch. Brandon had 2 slices. I had 1 bite that sat in my stomach like cement. That night, after Brandon fell asleep, I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and cried so hard I had to press a towel against my face to muffle the sound. I cried until my ribs ached. I cried because my husband had forgotten my birthday. I cried because a woman who was lying to us had baked me a cake to make herself look good. I cried because I was 29 years old, sitting on my bathroom floor at midnight, and I had never felt more alone. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan. Happy birthday, sis. I love you. How are you holding up? I typed, I can't do this anymore. She called immediately. I answered in a whisper. Ash, listen to me, Megan said, her voice fierce and clear. You found that email 3 weeks ago. What are you waiting for? I don't know. I'm scared. If I blow this up, I might lose Brandon. Honey, you're already losing him. The words hit like a bucket of ice water. I sat there on the bathroom floor with the phone pressed to my ear and the truth pressing against my chest. You need to talk to someone who isn't me, Megan continued, someone professional. And I don't mean a therapist. I mean a lawyer. You need to know your rights. Your name's on that lease. You've been documenting everything. Use it. A lawyer? Megan, I don't want a divorce. I'm not saying divorce. I'm saying protection. There's a difference. And Ash? She paused. I found something. I wasn't going to tell you until I was sure, but remember how Karen said she was getting $2,600 a month from Social Security and her pension? Yeah. I was talking to Mom's friend Janet. She worked at the same insurance company Karen retired from, remember? Same office, different branch. Janet says that company's pension plan pays out based on years of service. Karen worked there for 26 years. Janet says the pension alone for someone with that tenure is around $2,200 a month, plus Social Security. I did the math in my head. If Karen's pension was $2,200 and her Social Security was around $1,800 based on her work history, That was $4,000 a month, not $2,600. She lied about her income, too, I whispered. She's pulling in at least $4,000 a month. She's about to pocket $40,000 from her house sale, and she's living in your apartment rent-free while making your husband forget your birthday. Ash, she's not struggling. She's conquering. Something snapped into place. Not broke, snapped, like a bone being set. It hurt, but suddenly everything was aligned. I need the name of a good attorney, I said. Already texted you 3. The first one, Rachel Torres, does free 30-minute consultations. Call her Monday. Monday morning, September 2nd, I sat in Rachel Torres's office in downtown Charlotte with a folder containing screenshots of Karen's email from the realtor, my documentation log with 47 entries, photos of the house rules list, text messages between Brandon and me showing his increasing dismissiveness, and a printout of the lease agreement with my name highlighted. Rachel was in her mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She reviewed everything in silence for 12 minutes. Then she looked up. Your name is on the lease. Hers is not. She has no legal right to reside in your apartment without your consent. You can issue her a written notice to vacate. In North Carolina, for a guest with no lease, you're looking at reasonable notice. Given the circumstances and the documentation you have, I'd say you're on solid ground. What about Brandon? He's on the lease too. He can't unilaterally invite a permanent resident without your agreement, which you gave conditionally, 2 to 3 months. It's been over 3. Your original agreement has expired. She tapped the folder. This email from the realtor is your ace. She misrepresented her financial situation to gain access to your home. That's not just a family disagreement. That's calculated. So what do I do? Rachel leaned forward. You have 2 options. Option 1, confront them both with evidence, try to negotiate Karen's departure. Option 2, issue a formal written notice to vacate, set a deadline, and make it clear that if she doesn't leave, your next step involves the authorities. Which do you recommend? Honestly, both. Confront first. If that doesn't work, you serve the notice. But Ashley, she took off her glasses, whatever you do, do it soon. The longer she's there, the more complicated it gets. And based on what you've shown me, this woman is not going to leave voluntarily. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat and a plan forming in my mind. Clear, precise, step by step. No more crying on bathroom floors. No more swallowing. No more smiling while someone dismantled my life, one rule at a time. That evening, I walked into the apartment and found Karen in the living room, rearranging the bookshelf again. She'd removed the last of my books entirely and replaced them with a set of encyclopedias she'd brought from her house. She looked up cheerfully. "Oh, Ashley, I was just—" "Karen," I said, "we need to talk. You, me, and Brandon. Tonight, all 3 of us, at the kitchen table at 8 o'clock. Her smile flickered. "About what?" "About 445 Pinewood Lane." The color left her face so fast, it was like watching a time lapse of winter arriving. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hand tightened on the encyclopedia she was holding. "I don't know what you—" "8 o'clock, I said. "And Karen?" I held her gaze. "Bring your checkbook." I didn't eat dinner that night. I sat in the bedroom with the door closed, listening to the sounds of the apartment. Karen's footsteps pacing the guest room, the creak of floorboards, a cabinet opening and closing. She was nervous. Good. Brandon got home at 6:45. I heard Karen intercept him in the hallway, heard the low murmur of her voice, urgent and fast. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. She was getting ahead of the story, spinning it, framing whatever version she thought would protect her. At 7:50, I walked out of the bedroom carrying the folder Rachel Torres had helped me organize. I set it on the kitchen table, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down. My hands were steady. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth, but my hands were steady. Brandon came in first. He looked at the folder, then at me. "Ash, what's this about? Mom says you're upset about something. Can we just—" "Sit down, Brandon." Something in my voice stopped him. He pulled out a chair. Karen appeared in the doorway. She'd changed clothes, put on a soft pink cardigan, minimal makeup, reading glasses perched on her nose, the costume of a harmless grandmother. She sat across from me with her hands folded, and I noticed they were trembling. Just slightly, just enough. "Okay," I said. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to talk. You're both going to listen. When I'm done, you can respond. But if either of you interrupts me, I will stand up, walk out of this apartment, and the next conversation we have will be through my attorney." Brandon's eyebrows shot up. "Attorney? Ashley, what the—" "That counts as an interruption." He closed his mouth. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, the photographed email from Patricia Holden, printed in full color on glossy paper. I slid it across the table to Brandon. "This is an email from Karen's realtor, dated May 14th, 3 weeks before Karen called you crying about her finances. Read it." Brandon picked it up. I watched his eyes move across the page. I watched the exact moment it registered, the listing price, the mortgage balance, the projected profit. His lips parted. He looked at his mother. Karen's face had gone completely white, not the performative distress I'd seen before. This was real, raw, caught. "Mom," Brandon said slowly, "what is this?" "Let me explain." "Not yet," I said. "I'm not done." I pulled out the second document, a printout of the pension information Megan had gathered from Janet, pay scales, years of service, estimated monthly payout for a 26-year employee of Karen's company. Karen told us she receives $2,600 a month, Social Security plus pension. But according to someone who worked at the same company for the same period, the pension alone for her tenure is approximately $2,200. Combined with Social Security, her actual income is closer to $4,000 a month. She underreported by $1,400. Brandon was staring at the papers like they were written in a language he didn't speak. I pulled out the third item, my documentation log, 47 entries, printed, dated, organized chronologically. Every incident, every manipulation, every rearranged room and canceled date night and guilt trip. This is a record of everything that's happened since June 8th, the day Karen moved in. 47 documented incidents of boundary violations, financial misrepresentation, and deliberate interference in our marriage. I set down the final page. The formal notice to vacate, prepared by Rachel Torres, printed on legal letterhead. And this is a written notice requiring Karen to vacate our apartment within 14 days. It's legally binding. My attorney reviewed it. The kitchen was so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator humming. Karen broke first. Of course she did. "Brandon, honey, listen to me." Her voice cracked beautifully, and I mean that. It was a beautiful performance. Tears welling up, chin quivering, hands reaching across the table toward her son. "I was scared. I made mistakes with the money, and I was ashamed. I didn't want you to think less of me. The house, yes, I listed it, but I didn't know if it would sell, and I panicked." "You panicked before you even told Brandon there was a problem," I said. "You listed your house on May 14th. You called Brandon on May 25th. You had a plan, Karen. You had a buyer's market analysis and a realtor and a listing agreement. And then you called your son and cried." It wasn't like that. "How much did the house sell for?" Dead silence. "Karen, did the house sell?" Her mouth worked. No sound came out. Then, very quietly, it closed on August 15th. August 15th. She'd been living with us for over 2 months, rent-free, while sitting on the proceeds of her home sale. "How much?" Brandon asked. His voice was different now. Low. Flat. I'd never heard him sound like that. Karen's eyes darted between us. 38,000, after closing costs and the mortgage payoff. $38,000, Brandon repeated. "You've had $38,000 since August, and you've been living here for free? You told me you had $3,000 in your checking account. You told me you were about to lose everything." "I was going to tell you." "When?" His voice rose. "When were you going to tell me, Mom? After you moved in permanently? After you convinced me to let you stay indefinitely? After you—" He stopped. His hand went to his forehead. "Oh, my God. The spreadsheet. You sat with me and ran numbers on why you should stay, and the whole time you had $38,000 in the bank." Karen was crying now. Real tears. I could tell the difference by this point. Real tears looked messier, less photogenic. Her nose was running, and she didn't reach for a napkin. "I was lonely," she whispered. "That house was so empty after your father died. 11 years alone, Brandon. 11 years of eating dinner by myself and watching television until I fell asleep on the couch. When I saw a chance to be close to you, to be part of a family again, I took it. Maybe I went about it the wrong way, but my heart— Your heart made a 12-point list of rules for my wife to follow in her own home," Brandon said. "Rule 12, I'm your son first and Ashley's husband second. That was your heart talking?" Karen flinched, actually flinched, like he'd raised a hand. "And my birthday," I said quietly. I hadn't planned to bring it up, but it came out on its own. "You baked me that cake, that beautiful 3-layer cake. And Brandon forgot my birthday entirely because you'd already taken over every part of our routine. But you remembered. You had it ready because it made you look like the good guy and him look like he didn't need me anymore. You were replacing me, Karen, methodically. Room by room, routine by routine." She shook her head, but the denial was weak, exhausted. Brandon pushed back from the table. His chair scraped against the floor. He stood up, walked to the window, and stood there with his back to us, hands braced on the sill. 14 days, he said, without turning around. "Brandon," Karen started, 14 days, Mom. You find a place, an apartment, a rental, an extended stay hotel, I don't care. You have $38,000. You have $4,000 a month in income. You can afford to live on your own. You were always able to afford to live on your own. You would throw your own mother out on the street?" He turned around, and the look on his face, I'll never forget it. It was grief, pure grief. Not for the situation, but for the version of his mother he'd believed in. "You threw yourself out, Mom, the day you decided to lie to me." Karen looked at me one last time. No tears now, just something hard and cold behind her eyes. "You did this," she said. "You turned my son against me." "No," I said, "you did that all by yourself. I just showed him the receipts." She stood up, walked to her room, and closed the door. Not a slam, a quiet click. Somehow, that was worse. Brandon didn't move for a long time. Then he sat back down across from me and put his head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "Ash, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I should have. We'll talk about us later," I said. "Right now, we make sure she's out in 14 days. What I didn't tell him, what I couldn't tell him yet, was that I wasn't sure there was an us to talk about, because the man who forgot my birthday, who chose his mother's tablet over dinner with his wife, who sat across from me at this very table and told me his mother was staying indefinitely without ever asking how I felt, that man had broken something, and I didn't know yet if it could be fixed. The next 12 days were war. Karen didn't pack, not a single box. She went about her routine like the conversation had never happened, cooking breakfast, rearranging the living room, watching her true crime shows at full volume. She was calling my bluff. She was betting that Brandon would cave, that the guilt would eat him alive, that mother-son blood would prove thicker than a piece of legal letterhead. And she almost won. On day 9, I came home to find Brandon sitting on the couch with red eyes. Karen had spent the afternoon telling him stories about his childhood, his first steps, his father's funeral, how she'd worked double shifts to pay for his braces. "Maybe we could give her another month," he said weakly, "just to find the right place." I sat down next to him. I took his hand, and I said, "Brandon, I love you, but if your mother is still in this apartment on day 15, I won't be." He looked at me, searching my face for a bluff. He didn't find one. On day 13, Karen still hadn't packed. I came home from work, set my bag down, and called Rachel Torres from the parking lot. "She's not leaving," I said. "Then we escalate. I'll file the formal eviction notice with the magistrate tomorrow morning. Once it's filed, she has 10 days by law. If she doesn't comply, the sheriff's office gets involved. Do it." That evening, I handed Karen the court paperwork. She read it, standing in the kitchen. And for the first time since I'd known her, she had no script, no tears, no martyr routine, no cutting remark. She just stood there holding the paper, looking old and small and completely outmaneuvered. "You would really do this to me," she said. Not a question. "You did this to yourself, Karen, every single step." She looked at me for a long, terrible moment. Then she went to her room, and I heard what I'd been waiting 3 months to hear, the sound of boxes being packed. By the evening of day 14, that Tuesday in October I mentioned at the very beginning, Karen had loaded most of her things into her car. Brandon carried the heavy boxes. Neither of them spoke. The ceramic cats, the encyclopedias, the needlepoint that said "Home is where Mom is," all of it went into the trunk and back seat of her silver Camry. But the last load, 3 suitcases and a garbage bag of linens, didn't fit. Karen dragged them to the curb near the dumpster, planning to come back for a second trip. And that's where she sat down, on the cold concrete in her $200 wool coat at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. That's where Brandon found her, mascara running, clutching the crumpled rules list she'd somehow kept all these months. "This is a mistake," she kept saying. "This is a mistake. This is a mistake." Brandon looked at me in the doorway. His face was wrecked. "Ashley," he said, his voice shaking, "what the hell happened?" And I gave him my answer. 4 words. "Ask your mother, Brandon." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He stood there in the parking lot between his crying mother and his wife, and for the first time in his life, he had absolutely nothing to say. But I wasn't done, not even close, because what happened next, what I found on Karen's phone the following morning, changed everything. And I mean everything. Karen didn't leave that night. She sat by the dumpster for almost an hour while Brandon loaded her remaining things into the Camry. He booked her a room at the Extended Stay America off Route 51, $69 a night, which she could absolutely afford, but acted like it was a homeless shelter. He drove her there himself. I stayed in the apartment alone, standing in the guest room that still smelled like her perfume, and felt something I didn't expect. Not victory, emptiness. Brandon came home at midnight. He didn't say a word. He walked past me, got into bed fully clothed, and turned toward the wall. I stood in the bedroom doorway watching his back and thought, so this is what winning feels like. The next morning, Wednesday, I woke up early. Brandon was already gone. His coffee mug was in the sink, unwashed, which was unlike him. I poured my own coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the spot where Karen had slid me that yellow legal pad page 3 months ago. The table was empty now. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet I used to crave. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Ashley, this is Diane Mercer, Karen's friend from church. I think you need to see something. Can you call me?" Diane, the friend Karen had mentioned, the one she'd supposedly run her rules list by. I almost deleted the text. I was done with Karen's orbit, done with her allies, done with the entire constellation of people who enabled her. But something, instinct maybe, or the fact that Diane had reached out to me and not Brandon, made me call. Diane picked up on the first ring. "Thank you for calling. I know this is strange. Karen doesn't know I'm contacting you." "What is it, Diane?" "I was at Karen's house last month helping her with some paperwork before the house closed, and she left her iPad open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, but a message popped up and I saw it." She paused. It was a group text. Karen, someone named Linda, and someone named Patrice. The messages went back months. "Ashley, they were about you." My coffee went cold in my hand. What do you mean about me? Karen was giving them updates, like a play-by-play. How she'd moved in, how she was getting Brandon to pull away from you, how the birthday cake had worked perfectly. There was a message from mid-August, after the house sold, where Karen wrote, and I remember this word for word because it made me sick. Phase 2 complete. She has no idea. By Christmas, Brandon will file and I'll have my son back. The kitchen tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. By Christmas, Brandon will file, I repeated. For divorce. That was her plan, Ashley. She wasn't just moving in. She was trying to end your marriage. Systematically. Linda and Patrice were coaching her. Linda suggested the rules list to provoke you into doing something Brandon couldn't forgive. Patrice recommended the birthday cake strategy. They were coordinating. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. I saved screenshots, Diane said quietly. I'll send them to you right now. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry. Karen's been my friend for 20 years, but what she did to you, that's not something a friend stays quiet about. My phone vibrated 6 times in a row. 6 screenshots. I opened them one by one with shaking hands, and there it was. The entire architecture of Karen's campaign, laid out in blue and gray text bubbles like a war room briefing. May 12th, Karen to Linda and Patrice. Listed the house today. Now I just need Brandon to invite me. Working on the story. May 24th, Karen. Called Brandon. Cried about the mortgage. He bought it completely. Ashley will be the problem, but I can handle her. June 15th, Patrice. Has she snapped yet? Karen. Not yet. I'm pushing. Rearranged her kitchen today. She's holding it together, but I can see the cracks. July 3rd. Linda. Give her the rules. Make them outrageous. Either she explodes and looks crazy, or she submits, and you've won. August 15th. Karen. House closed. $38,000 in my account. Phase 2 complete. She has no idea. By Christmas, Brandon will file, and I'll have my son back. September 5. Karen. She found the realtor email. Didn't expect that. Adjusting strategy. More tears. The last message was from 2 days ago, the night Karen sat by the dumpster. Karen to Linda. She won, for now, but Brandon is devastated. Give it 2 weeks. He'll come crawling back to me, and she'll be the villain who threw his mother on the street. I set the phone down. I pressed both hands flat on the table and breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth, until the room stopped spinning. Then I forwarded every screenshot to Rachel Torres with one line. Can I use these? Rachel called back in 11 minutes. Absolutely you can. This is evidence of a deliberate, premeditated scheme to defraud you emotionally and financially, to infiltrate your household under false pretenses, and to engineer the dissolution of your marriage. If you ever need a restraining order, this is your foundation. But more importantly, Brandon needs to see these. Brandon came home at 6:30 that evening. He looked terrible. Dark circles, wrinkled shirt, the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep. He set his keys on the counter and said, "We need to talk about what happens now." "Yes," I said, "we do. Sit down." He sat. I placed my phone on the table between us, opened to the first screenshot, and said, "Your mother's friend Diane sent me these this morning. Read them. All of them." I watched him read. I watched every expression cross his face. Confusion first, then recognition, then horror, then something that looked like his entire understanding of his own life collapsing inward. His hand came up to cover his mouth. His eyes went glassy. When he got to the last message, "Give it 2 weeks, he'll come crawling back," he set the phone down and stared at the wall for a very long time. "She was trying to make me divorce you," he whispered. "Yes. From the beginning, before she even moved in." "Yes. The birthday cake, the spreadsheet, telling me to skip date nights, all of it." "All of it, Brandon." He put his head on the table. His shoulders shook. I sat across from him and let him cry, and I felt something complicated. Grief for him, grief for us, and underneath it all, a cold, clear anger that had nothing to do with tears. When he looked up, his face was wrecked. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to call your mother, right now, on speaker, and I want you to read her the last message out loud." He picked up his phone. His hands were trembling so badly he had to try twice to find her contact. It rang 4 times. "Brandon, honey," Karen's voice, warm and relieved. "I knew you'd call. Listen, I've been thinking—" "Give it 2 weeks," Brandon read, his voice flat and destroyed. "He'll come crawling back to me, and she'll be the villain who threw his mother on the street." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. "Where did you—" Karen started. "Did you plan this? From the beginning? Before you even called me about the house?" "Brandon, whoever showed you that is twisting. Did you plan this?" Another silence. Then, very quietly, Karen said, "I just wanted my son back." Brandon closed his eyes. A tear ran down his cheek. "You never lost me, Mom. But you just did." He hung up. He sat there holding the phone in his lap, and I watched 10 years of denial crack open inside him like an egg. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to really hear it." He looked at me. "I love you. I have loved you since our 3rd date when you carried an elderly woman's groceries to her car in the rain and didn't even mention it afterward. But love is not enough if I can't trust you to choose us. Not me over her. Us. Our marriage. Our life. The thing we built together." "I know," he whispered. "I need couples counseling, non-negotiable, and I need you to set a boundary with Karen that doesn't bend the first time she cries. If you can't do that, then I need to know now, because I will not go through this again." "I'll do it. All of it. Whatever it takes." "Don't tell me what I want to hear, Brandon. Show me." He nodded, and for the first time in months, when he reached for my hand across the table, I let him take it. We started couples therapy the following week with a counselor named Dr. Anita Wells. Twice a week, every week, for 4 months. It was brutal. Brandon had to confront patterns he'd never examined. How Karen had parentified him after his father died. How he'd been trained since childhood to manage her emotions at the expense of his own. I had to confront my own patterns, too. My terror of instability that made me swallow things I should have spit out. My inability to ask for help until I was already drowning. Karen tried twice more. A letter in November, 6 pages, handwritten, claiming Diane had fabricated the screenshots. Brandon didn't open it. I did, documented it, and filed it with Rachel Torres. Then a surprise visit at Thanksgiving. She showed up at our apartment door with a pumpkin pie and tears. Brandon opened the door, said, "Mom, I love you, but you can't be here. Call Dr. Wells's office if you want to schedule a joint session." And he closed the door. She never called Dr. Wells. Brandon's sister in Portland, when she heard the full story, with screenshots included, stopped speaking to Karen for 3 months. It was the first time anyone in the Mitchell family had held Karen accountable, and according to Brandon, it shook something loose. Karen started seeing her own therapist in January. Whether it stuck, I don't know. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. By February, Brandon and I had found our way back to something. Not the same thing we'd had before, because that innocent, unexamined happiness was gone forever, but something stronger, something with scar tissue in it, which meant it could take more weight. He brought me coffee again, black with 2 sugars. He set it on the nightstand every morning and kissed my forehead, and I let myself feel it without waiting for the other shoe to drop. We hit our down payment goal in April, a little behind the original schedule, but we hit it. We closed on a 3-bedroom house in Oakdale in June, a year almost to the day after Karen had first walked through our apartment door with her suitcases and her plan. The house had a big kitchen, a backyard with a dogwood tree, and a guest room that I told Brandon, with a completely straight face, we were converting into a home office. He laughed. Then he looked at me to make sure I was serious. I was serious. Last month, I was unpacking the last box in the office, my books, the ones Karen had stacked on the floor to make room for her encyclopedias. and I found something wedged between two paperbacks, a crumpled piece of yellow legal paper, the rules list. I must have shoved it in there months ago and forgotten. I smoothed it out on the desk and read it one more time. All 12 rules. The little smiley face at the bottom. Then I fed it through the shredder, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on my own porch in front of my own house, watching the sun go down over my own street. My phone buzzed. Brandon. Picking up Ty on the way home. The spicy one you like. Love you, Ash. I typed back. Love you too. Hurry home. And I meant it. Every word. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. We still had hard days. Brandon still flinched sometimes when his phone rang and the caller ID said, Mom. I still sometimes lay awake at night running through what-ifs. The scar tissue pulled when the weather changed. But here's what I know now, at 30, sitting on this porch with my wine and my dogwood tree and my shredded rules list. Nobody gets to write the rules for your life. Not your mother-in-law, not your husband, not the voice in your head that says, keep the peace at any cost. Peace that costs you yourself isn't peace, it's surrender. And I don't surrender. Not anymore.